Have you ever noticed someone being too quiet in a group, always saying, "I'm just tired"? Or maybe a friend who always jokes about being stressed but seems to be doing fine on the surface? The truth is, some behaviors we consider normal can actually be subtle signs of mental illness. These signs often fly under the radar because they look like everyday habits being organized. Staying busy, needing alone time, even being funny. But beneath the surface, they may point to something deeper. Let's start with perfectionism. A lot of people wear it like a badge of honor. They say things like, "I'm just very detail-oriented," or "I can't stop until it's exactly right." Perfectionism seems like a good thing after all. Striving for excellence is often rewarded. But when someone is never satisfied with their work, constantly anxious about making mistakes, procrastinates because they're afraid they won't do it perfectly, that can be a sign of obsessive-compulsive disorder or an anxiety disorder. It's not about ambition, it's about fear. A fear of not being enough, of being judged, of losing control. Then there's the people pleaser. Know the type, always saying yes, always accommodating others, never voicing disagreement. They seem kind and generous, but sometimes this behavior comes from deep-rooted anxiety or trauma. It's a survival strategy, putting others first because they fear rejection or abandonment. Chronic people-pleasing can be a symptom of borderline personality disorder, codependency, or social anxiety. It's not just being nice, it's being terrified of not being liked. What about the person who's always joking? The class clown, the friend who's always laughing, making fun of themselves, deflecting any serious talk with humor? It's easy to assume they're happy, but for many, humor is a mask. It's a way to hide pain, to avoid vulnerability. Some people who joke the most are battling depression, anxiety, or unresolved trauma. They've learned that laughter keeps people at a distance and prevents them from being truly seen. Now, let's talk about isolation. Wanting alone time isn't unusual, especially for introverts. But when someone starts withdrawing from social activities, avoids phone calls, cancels plans, or just disappears for long periods, that can be a red flag. Social withdrawal is one of the earliest and most common signs of depression. It can also be linked to schizophrenia, bipolar disorder during depressive episodes, or PTSD. The challenge is, when people isolate, others often let them, thinking they're just being independent. But inside, they may be drowning in silence. Here's another one: overworking. Hustle culture glorifies being busy, staying late at the office, checking emails at midnight. But sometimes that's not ambition, it's avoidance. Some people use work to distract themselves from inner turmoil. It becomes a way to avoid dealing with emotions, relationships, or past trauma. This can be a symptom of high-functioning anxiety or even manic episodes in bipolar disorder. Their productivity looks admirable from the outside, but internally, it's chaos. Let's not forget irritability. We usually don't associate mood disorders with anger. We think of sadness, crying, despair. But many people, especially men, express depression through anger. They may seem short-tempered, impatient, or constantly annoyed. This isn't just a personality trait. It could be a symptom of major depressive disorder, especially when combined with fatigue, sleep problems, or feelings of hopelessness. Then there's excessive independence. We often praise people who don't need anyone or do everything on their own. But this hyper-independence can actually be a response to trauma. When someone has been hurt, betrayed, or neglected in the past, they may learn not to rely on anyone. It's a defense mechanism. While it may look like strength, it can be rooted in deep mistrust, abandonment fears, complex PTSD. Another behavior we often ignore is over-apologizing. It's constantly saying sorry even for things that aren't your fault can be a sign of low self-esteem, anxiety, or emotional abuse. It's a learned behavior, especially in people who were raised in environments where they were blamed or criticized often. These people apologize as a preemptive move to avoid conflict, rejection, or punishment. Let's talk about substance use. Having a drink after work, smoking occasionally, using recreational drugs, these are often seen as social or casual behaviors. But when they become a way to cope with emotional pain, numbness, or anxiety, they become symptoms. Is incredibly common in mental illness. Many people with depression, PTSD, bipolar disorder, or anxiety use substances to escape their reality. The problem is, this often leads to addiction, worsening their mental health. Compulsive behavior is another overlooked sign. Someone who shops excessively, binge eats, scrolls endlessly through social media, or gambles may not just be undisciplined, they may be trying to soothe themselves. These repetitive behaviors often provide a short-term dopamine hit, a brief relief from pain. But over time, they can indicate underlying disorders like OCD, impulse control disorders, or depression. And let's talk about being too responsible. That person who always has it together, who manages everything flawlessly, who never seems to have a bad day. They often grew up in environments where they had to be the adult. Maybe they had emotionally immature parents, or they were neglected. This parentified child becomes an overachieving adult, but inside, they're overwhelmed and deeply anxious. So their responsibility isn't confidence, it's a coping mechanism. Now consider emotional numbness. People often assume mental illness looks like extreme emotions. Sometimes, it's the absence of emotion that signals something's wrong. Someone who doesn't get excited, doesn't feel joy, or feels disconnected from life may be experiencing depression or dissociation. They may not cry, not because they're strong, but because they've shut down emotionally. Next, insomnia or sleeping too much. Sleep issues are so common that they often get dismissed. But they're one of the most telling symptoms of mental health disorders. Struggling to fall asleep, waking up frequently, or sleeping excessively can be tied to depression, anxiety, PTSD, or bipolar disorder. It's not just bad sleep, it's a window into the mind's unrest. Let's talk about controlling behavior. Someone who micromanages, always has to be in control, gets anxious when plans change. They're not just particular. That can stem from anxiety disorders or trauma. When someone grows up in unpredictable environments, they learn that control equals safety. Letting go feels like danger, even in harmless situations. Even chronic indecisiveness, struggling to make choices, constantly second-guessing. Needing reassurance can be a sign of anxiety, especially generalized anxiety disorder. These people aren't flaky or incapable. Their minds are constantly running what-if scenarios, paralyzing them with fear of making the wrong move. Let's take a moment to talk about eating habits. Changes in appetite, eating too much, too little, or obsessively focusing on food can signal mental health issues like depression, anxiety, or eating disorders. But these changes often get ignored because they blend into modern culture. Skipping meals is seen as dieting. Overeating is blamed on stress. But behind these behaviors might be someone silently struggling with body image, control, or emotional regulation. What about someone who keeps changing jobs, relationships, hobbies, always searching, never satisfied? This could reflect underlying restlessness from ADHD, borderline personality disorder, or even bipolar disorder. It's not just impulsivity, it's a craving for something stable, a deep dissatisfaction that comes from within. It's not from the external world. Lastly, let's talk about the strong friend. The one who checks on everyone, gives the best advice, lifts others up but never opens up themselves. They're always fine. It's always okay. But strength can be a mask. Many strong friends are struggling silently because they feel like they don't have permission to fall apart. They carry everyone else's burdens, but no one carries theirs. It's easy to assume mental illness looks dramatic breakdowns. It's panic attacks, sobbing in a corner. But more often, it looks like these quiet, everyday behaviors. That's why it's so important to look deeper, to ask questions, to notice changes. Just because someone looks functional doesn't mean they're not hurting. Just because they smile doesn't mean they're okay. Mental illness is often invisible. It hides in routines, in habits, in normal behavior. And the people who are struggling may not even realize it themselves. They may believe they're just tired, introverted, lazy, or too sensitive, because that's what society tells them. But mental health is complex, and it doesn't always follow a script. So if you see yourself in these patterns, know this: you're not alone. You're not broken, and you don't have to suffer in silence. It's okay to seek help, to talk to a therapist, to tell someone you trust. There is strength in asking for support. And if you see someone else exhibiting these behaviors, gently reach out. Ask how they're really doing. Listen without judgment. You might be the only one who noticed. Mental illness doesn't always look like what we expect. But with awareness and compassion, we can learn to see the signs and maybe even save a life. Remember, what seems normal on the outside could be a silent cry for help on the inside. Don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it. Choose to care, to understand, to connect.